Okay, here we go. Here's another PowerPoint for you for the Rossetti poetry. This is Babylon the Great. As you can see, this is a later poem. It's 1893 and Christina Rossetti is 63 at this point. Could say in her fairly solid evangelical Christian, serious Christian theology kind of frame of mind at this point. Okay. So just that contextual understanding of who and what is Babylon and what are all the associations that Rossetti is relying on her very religious Victorian audience to understand is implied by the term Babylon. Okay, so Babylon is mentioned in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is the last book of the Christian New Testament, so the very last book of the Bible if you're a Christian, and it's all prophecies about the end of the world. And in it, the person writing the book of Revelation describes he's having visions, he's prophesying, having visions of the end of the world. And so he sees what's going to happen at the end of the world. And he describes this whore, lovely word, we're not going to use that in our lives, are we? And she is Babylon personified, okay? And she is described thusly. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great. Okay, from whence comes the title of this poem. The mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So Revelations is written after Jesus has died and his followers have gone around preaching his version of religion and getting martyred by the Romans for it. So that's, well, we'll see in a minute why Babylon can represent the Roman Empire. Okay, but why Babylon? Babylon has nothing to do with Rome. It's got very little to do with the New Testament. So the reason is going back to the Old Testament, when there was a place called Babylon, the Babylonian Empire, and this is way back in ancient history. The Babylonian Empire defeated and enslaved the Jewish people in about 605 BCE. Okay, so long before Christ or the New Testament and the book of Revelations. And in the Old Testament, you won't be surprised that the Jewish historians writing about this is a historical fact, are not fond of Babylon at all. And they depict it as full of luxury and power, but a corrupt and godless place, because obviously the Babylonians were not Jewish and weren't following the Jewish religion. So the New Testament is composed in the 1st century, so they use this idea of Babylon for mostly Jewish audience to symbolize the Roman Empire, because it's very similar to what Babylon did. It's an imperial power, and rather than persecuting Jewish people, it's persecuting Christians. So that's how Babylon has got this long history of standing for these things. From the 16th century, the Protestants, who were against the Roman Catholic Church, they'd broken away from the Roman Catholic Church, and they particularly thought the Roman Catholic Church was corrupt. They referred to the Roman Catholic Church as Babylon. So generally, Babylon is a criticism of any institution that's become corrupt, too wealthy, focused on luxury, and has been tempted by the world and has fallen for what the world has to offer, which is often power as well. So any and all of these meanings of Babylon can be at play in this poem. The only one that can't is Rastafarians, who also talk about the world as Babylon. Okay, so in the poem, Rossetti picks up on how Revelation describes Babylon as a seductive woman, and she personifies Babylon as a female figure. In the first quatrain, the temptations of the world are symbolized as female sexual temptations. Now, this poem is not warning you against giving in to the sexual temptation of a female. This is a poem aimed at men and women. It's about not giving in to the world. So it's a metaphor that the world is as tempting as a tempting lady can be to a gentleman. So she might mesh you in her wanton hair. for example. That is the Victorian sexualization of loose female hair. We can see the image there, famous, I think it is Dante Rossetti painting of one of his so-called stunner models with her beautiful red hair all loose, but you can see she's also being a bit of a seductive lady with her bosoms and her shoulder half out, and she's combing her hair, and this is very much an intimate thing. Enmeshed means being caught up with no escape, so you might be attracted to this lady by her lovely hair, but when you're caught, no escape. And so Babylon, the world, corruption, practices these arts. Yeah, and these seems to be the arts of seduction. Prostitution is sometimes called the oldest profession, and she is adept in arts grown old yet ever new. The art of seduction. Okay, so the world does not just tempt one through the idea of, having some sexual fun. Wine can stand. Just wine itself is going to offer you some pleasure, but it can stand for all forms of indulgence and getting intoxicated in whatever way. So we're getting here, her heart lusts, no wine is in her cup, but filth is there. Oh, unutterable was plagues hidden out of view. Yikes. So there's some dancing going on as well in what she offers you. Dancing may be sexual temptation, but just some sort of, wild hedonistic enjoyment. She also symbolizes worldly wealth, all her clothes and jewels described in great detail, and we have polysynthetic coordination in the listing of her wealth and riches, which emphasizes the extent of it. So where is she? Her scarlet vest and gold and gem and pearl. Yeah, so it's those and, that's the polysynthetic listing to really emphasize it. Okay. So Rossetti uses archaic language, which in this context sounds biblical, and that syntax, foul is she. Yeah, that's not modern syntax, not even in Victorian England. She is foul would be the syntax you would expect. The reader is addressed as thou and thee. So that also helps for the archaic tone. There are repeated imperatives: gaze not upon her, gaze not upon her, gaze not upon her. Got that 4 times, which emphasize the importance of avoiding temptation. Yeah, not just not being tempted by temptation, but not even going near to temptation. So if you remember Lizzie in Goblin Market, puts her fingers in her ears and closes her eyes. Yeah, so it's not just, I can be really strong, I can resist temptation. Don't even let yourself get near it. The final line, she amid her pomp is going to be set on fire. It's a reference to the fires of hell and the final day of judgment. And there's a didactic tone of voice throughout, addressing the reader directly as you, thou, using those imperatives, and everything being a very definitive statement. Yeah, there's no doubt, there's no hedging of facts, as you could say. So in terms of using the sonnet form, using the structure of the sonnet form, you can break it down into the 2 quatrains and then a sestet. The first, and you can link this to rhyme scheme obviously, focuses on the seductive nature of Babylon, i.e. the world. The second then moves on to what her true purpose is. Yeah, so this is what she seems like, this is what she's really up to. She's not after love, she's after blood. Yeah, and she's keeping all these filthy things out of view. And in the second one, you get a lot more enjambment, creating, what can we say, a disturbing sense of anarchy and chaos. Her heart lusts not for love, but through and through for blood. No wine is in her cup, but filth is there unutterable. So both of those go over the line. And then the final sestet is warning of the danger to the reader. So this is what she's really like, but this is what the danger is to you. Gaze not upon her, lest thou be as she. The listing in the last 2 lines runs over, embodying the vanity of her wealth and display, given that it's all going to be destroyed by the fire. Her scarlet vest and gold and gem and pearl, and she, amid her pomp, are set on fire. So remember what I've said to you before about commenting on more than one feature in what you quote? So if you're talking about the polysynthetic listing, you could also mention the enjambment. Yeah, so more than one technique may be going on if you quote a longish bit. Description and diction, how we get really vivid pictures of Babylon. Her lust for blood is compared to that of a leopard, which is very obviously carnivorous and very predatory, as a spotted panther. Yeah, that means it's a leopard. It lusts in its lair. The cup she holds symbolises her deceitful nature, and what's inside it is really, really strongly described as disgusting. Filth unutterable and plagues. The descriptive language of appearance is all valuable and beautiful. And also we get the alliteration when it's talking about getting involved in her twirling, whirling dance. Giddy under the gazer could reflect the effect of dizziness. Gaze not upon her, for her dancing whirl turns giddy, the fixed gazer presently. Yeah, so that sounds like a sort of dizziness and giddiness to the diction. So what's going on? What's Rossetti wanting to talk about? She was a serious theological thinker. Yeah, she had read the Bible, studied the Bible at great depth. She was especially interested in Revelations, and this as it's a prophecy of what is to come. It's one of the key contextual themes is how religious poetry gives a woman in Victorian England power and authority to teach. Yeah, there's something about being serious about religion that gives a woman equality with a man. She can't be ordained, she can't be a priest, but she can read the Bible as much as anyone else, and she can study it and she can think about it. We might like to think about her previous rejections of marriage and love, which, you know, one bit of marriage and love is also a bit of lust and attraction. That's all getting rejected here. Her serious commitment to religious life, which I know you all know, but the more specific you are about that, yeah, that she worked in the penitentiary, that she dressed in a habit, that she was known as Sister Rossetti, those sorts of things. There could possibly be in here something about her distrust of Roman Catholicism. You remember what we've talked about that being a high church Anglican. It's very close to Roman Catholicism, but that's why it's really important to draw a line and say we're not Roman Catholics. They're still the baddies. And if you remember, one of her proposals of marriage she turned down because the guy was too close to Roman Catholicism and did actually convert. There's a lot of fear. Sometimes, not a lot of it, often. One of the things that Rossetti wrestles with Christianity is the possibility of hell and damnation. Yeah, if you think about What Would I Give, that's a poem that could be seen as being about religious despair and the thought of never being saved. And the poem, one of our popular themes for Rossetti, is the dangers of temptation, specifically sexual, but more generally all worldly pleasures. They're too tempting and they'll take you away from religion and take you to your doom. Okay, there we go.